those are the women I want to speak to, the ones that have lost hope.
Yeah.
What I want the women to feel is that they're the empowered individual, not the general statistics in the general population.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do.
Reading that book, Spirit Babies, about there is souls on the other side just waiting to choose you to be their parent. There's things that you're doing in your life that they're just waiting on the sidelines just for that moment to choose you.
Welcome to another episode of 80/20. My name is Georgia Sinclair and this is Shanina Shaik, and today we have an amazing guest with us. She's somebody I've actually known for a few years because I am a former patient. This is Danica Thornberry of Well People. Welcome, Danica.
Hello, ladies. Thank you so much for having me on today.
You are most welcome. Now, we're really excited about this conversation. Danica is in the fertility space. Now, why would I be a patient of Danica's? I don't have any children. I actually went through egg freezing about 7 years ago, and Danica was one of my practitioners at the time, and I couldn't wait to get you on the show because you have the most amazing story and so much advice for everybody, and I just know that everyone's going to get a lot out of today's episode.
Oh, that's saying so much.
Me too included.
Yes. So actually how we got you on this podcast is, obviously I've known you for a few years, but interestingly enough, Shanina forwarded me a video on Instagram that was from another podcast you did, I believe with Erin and Sarah Foster. And she said, this woman's so amazing, we have to get her on. I said, funny that I actually know her.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're really excited to chat about all things fertility today and your business and your story.
Thank you. I love talking about it. I try to be a source of inspiration.
You sure are.
Oh, thank you. I try.
Yeah. So first of all, I guess we should talk about how we met. As I mentioned briefly, I went through egg freezing, and I came to you at a really, really difficult time in my life because I was only 30 years old when I came to see you, and I had been to a fertility doctor who, I won't name names, but I now think was probably, somebody who probably shouldn't be practicing, to be frank. He didn't run the appropriate tests on me. When I went through my first round of egg freezing with him, he didn't give me the appropriate drugs on the appropriate day, and I actually lost all my eggs. But rather than just admitting a mistake, he said to me, oh, yeah, you're actually infertile.
Right. He said, you are the problem.
He told me I was the problem, which was an incredibly tough pill to swallow at 30. I was devastated. But instead of giving up, a friend actually took me out for dinner and suggested that I go and see another doctor, Dr. Guy Ringler, who was amazing. I hope we can also get him on the podcast one day. And it was Guy that actually introduced me to you because he told me when I went to see him, he said, he tested all my levels, first of all, and he said, you're actually fine. So that was a big shock. But he said, you do have some hormonal issues because of your brain tumor, and we actually need to get your body ready for pregnancy. You need to go and see Danica, which is how I found you, and that's how our story starts.
Thanks, Guy.
Yes.
Yeah, no pressure.
So for the audience, what do you do exactly? Like, how do you help women?
Okay, so I am an acupuncturist by trade, and I specialized in women's health as one of the first women, one of the first practitioners to specialize in women's health, specifically fertility. And that meant that I took 2 extra years after graduating with my general acupuncture degree to focus specifically on how to use Chinese herbs for ovarian function. But soon after I became licensed, I learned that I was infertile at age 31.
Wow.
And so that put a super passion into my schooling and the way that I was treating my patients. I needed to figure it out. I needed to really know, do these herbs work? So then I became very quickly like a test lab rat person. But I'm an acupuncturist, an herbalist. While I was helping my patients, I didn't tell any of them. This was 2001 when I got that diagnosis. I didn't let them know, oh, my fertility is even more challenged than yours. I just was like learning while helping the patients to improve their fertility, how to use the herbs or how to eat certain foods at certain times of the month to improve their hormone balance, which was like the very beginning of the seed program inception. Like it started in my thoughts of, wow, there really is something here. As every patient, I was writing some kind of a prescription pad and letting them know, on this day, I want you to eat seaweed, or on this day, I want you to drink raw milk, or on this day, have more eggs. So because of my own poor prognosis, I had endometriosis, I had a blocked fallopian tube, and I had diminished egg reserve and a high FSH. So they were telling me that I was going to go into menopause any second. So I learned
31.
at 31. Yeah,
God, that was even worse than what I was told.
right. But that's why when you came in, there was this very quick understanding, and maybe that's why I had some confidence to share with you, like, it's going to be okay. Guy had already given you more to hang your hat on, to feel encouraged about, than what they were able to give me at the same age. So the fact that you had something to work with was great. And we just hit it off really well, as you remember. But it was like, okay, we're going to throw herbs at it. I had the seed program already going, and you were willing to jump in there. So so one other thing I did is I wrote that book, Stick It To Me, Baby, which is the collection of stories. So it's pretty funny that you're liking my story, and I have this collection of stories, because I just think people are fascinating, and especially when they're going through infertility. And the women, they don't even know how fascinating they are. They get stuck in the fear.
Yeah.
But it's really like 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 years of their life where they're family building, and it's really life just changing them.
Yeah.
So I try to shine a spotlight. It's changing you for the better if you allow it to.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, first of all, I think I would have been completely lost and lost my shit had I not have met you, because like I said, like being told at 30 or 31 that you can't have children just rocks you as a woman, doesn't it? Because
whether you think you want to have kids ever or not, if somebody tells you that you can't do the thing that you are innately supposed to be able to do as a woman.
Yes.
And in my case, being an acupuncturist, and especially 23 years ago, that was like kind of like a joke. It was like, oh, that's a luxury spa item.
Yeah.
So for the medical community to not have any faith in me, I felt this certain like charge to show that holistic medicine, acupuncture, and herbs, and lifestyle change, and reconciling some emotional stuff, like really holistic, that can move the needle just as much.
Yeah.
And so when they told me I would not be a candidate for IVF, I just thought, well, who's saying that I wanted to do that anyway, or that was my plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that there's another option to choose than, such a medical aspect of IVF and your holistic approach. I think if it was for me, I would have taken that option as well. A lot of like doctors, and we've had like therapy, a lot of a holistic approach. My question for you is, and I'm really interested, is like, how does acupuncture actually change the course of infertility? Like, what is it that changes in the body? It's really interesting.
That's a great question. Of course, it's a layered approach, but the ways that acupuncture changes would be, first of all, it's very relaxing. It releases endorphins. And when the endorphins are flowing, there is this change in the brain. The neurohormones, they change, and they shift into a mindset of, it's all good, everything is going to be fine. I can't tell you, I don't know, 100+ times I've had women come in who are either having an impending miscarriage, or they lost a baby in between sessions, something tragic has happened, and they show up and they're so downtrodden, but then they leave and they're hugging and they're smiling and they're laughing and they're optimistic. It's been a conversation and a bolus of endorphins in their system. That's the only thing that's changed.
Yeah, and it does make a profound difference. I just, this is all taking me back to my own experience.
I have a very interesting story. So when I was talking to you before we started, I have a baby, and even with my doctor, I really wanted to take a natural approach. I had him naturally, but just my baby journey and my birth plan was very natural. And obviously being a first time mom, it's the body and the cervix that takes quite a long while to like,
Yeah, you were locked up.
you're locked up. But like Zai was ready to go. He was downwards, and my body wasn't just doing or opening up. It wasn't relaxing. So for the first time in my life, I chose to do acupuncture. And so I had a really wonderful lady come to my house in the setting and like make it really comfortable. And we did a process of acupuncture, and I went to see the doctor the next day, and my cervix opened up like a centimeter because Zai was going to be a big baby, and we wanted to get him going, and my body just needed to relax. And just because of the acupuncture, my cervix opened up to like a centimeter or two, and I think I went into labor about 2 days after.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not
amazing.
it is amazing, but it's not magic. There's science that is probably going to be explained in the future. The best way I can explain it is that we know we conduct electricity. If we put our fingers in an outlet, we're going to get a little shock, right? So we are conductors of electricity. The needles are made of metal. So when they go into the acupuncture points, it changes the electrochemistry in our body, and then that goes up to the brain and also the heart. And then those neurohormones come through, endorphins, serotonin, maybe some oxytocin. So the way that it flows in my office or care when I'm with my patients, I know that women heal by talking. And so
that was a big part of
we talk a
our
lot.
experience. We've talked a lot, like about a lot of things that I haven't even shared on this podcast yet. I mean, Shanina's my best friend, so she knows about my little sixth sense, but the audience doesn't know yet. Danica does.
Yes. That's that Piscean thing.
Yeah, we'll get to that. It's actually interesting that I may as well go there now. So
go there.
ever since I was a child, whether you believe it or not, and frankly, I don't care if you don't, because it's true for me. Ever since I was a child, I've had a connection to the spirit world, and I've talked about this at length with you. And it was interesting what you just said just then about, we know that we have electricity flowing through us, and that's where the acupuncture, that's how you can explain the acupuncture. Because that's exactly how I explain spirits to people when they ask me, what is a spirit? What is a ghost? How is it real? And I said, well, the only way I can describe it is that we're all electricity. Mm-hmm. And when our bodies die, that doesn't mean that our life and our spirit dies. It just travels somewhere else, which is why when I have a spirit come to me, it often comes through a light source, which makes the light source flicker.
Right. I was just going to say,
yes.
we're electricity, but we're really beings of light.
Yes.
Right? With skin suits on.
Yes. So we talked a lot about that.
We did. It was great.
Yeah.
There hasn't been any good conversations like that since you left the practice.
no more ghost seers, just me.
She told me this story over the phone, and it was like 11 o'clock at night. I was by myself in the house. I was like,
sorry. Georgia, read the room.
It was very interesting, and I believe it. So
yeah,
I'm very
there's no ghosts in the room right now. Not yet, anyway. I'll let you know if that changes.
But a lot of light.
There's a lot of light. The one could turn up any minute. So you mentioned briefly your story before. I mean, what a harrowing experience to have at 31. And I commend your bravery not putting that on your patients, because you must have been so tempted whenever anyone would come in to say, oh my God, me too.
Right. So back in the day, I was establishing myself. I talk about it in Stick It To Me Baby, where I'm talking about, like, I just opened this practice. I was in survival mode, which was not helping the fertility. It was probably driving the FSH up higher and higher all the time, because so much adrenaline, the opposite to the endorphins. That the acupuncture listens all this endorphins, but stress creates the adrenaline. So that would be a second way that acupuncture helps, having endorphins to negate some of the negative effects of adrenaline. So when my patients were coming in, I kept it very quiet because it was all an experiment for me. I was poring over this is how old I am, poring over journals and card catalog at UCLA.
That's not old.
I mean,
what do you mean?
I'm just saying, like, some people listening may not even know what a journal is. You go to Google or whatever, but
Yeah.
I actually went
It's a
to the
book,
books.
guys.
Yeah, so I went to the books and I was like, what makes ovaries age quicker? And there were things like conditions called oophorytis, which meant inflammation in the ovary. So then I would go on to the next, like, well, what causes inflammation in the ovary? And it was like sugar, sleeplessness, stress. Well, what helps fix that? Diet and quiet. And this stuff went back to like the 1800s of adrenal exhaustion and the impact on reproduction. So I started getting this information. So then, since I wasn't in a relationship, I wasn't actively trying, but my patients were, I could say to them, well, why don't you try having some full-fat, whole, raw milk that's got a raw egg in there, and see if you blend it up, drink it before you ovulate, what does that do for you? Like, can we get you to calm down? Can we reset the nervous system by adding good fats? And then next month she'd come in, she's pregnant. So it'd be like, okay, I'm making a mental note of these foods at this time. Wow. And I was really gathering information more than I was trying to connect with the patients with a success story of my own to be an inspiration. I just didn't know. I was young, and it was like, I've got to figure out how to make this work, because my business depended on it. Like, I wanted to be the acupuncturist that the doctors sent their patients to because I could help their success rate. I didn't really care to share anything that was going on. And I also didn't know how it was going to turn. So it was like all the fertility patients, nobody really wants to talk about it until they know how it turns out. So I can respect that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad that you started sharing your story, because coming to you at the same age, going through something similar was, I can't tell you how much it helped me to hear. And especially since you're a success story.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
That it actually worked out.
Yes.
And it was the tipping point where, I don't know, I'd helped, after like the first 500 kids, I was complaining to the practitioner there who helped me. She used to work in my office, and I would get really depressed and scared sometimes. And I would say, why do I have to write a book and help thousands of patients, and I don't even have a relationship for me to see if it's working? And then it was like, okay, now we've collected 1,000 success stories. And then I started thinking, if I take these stories that I've collected of success, and to be able to see making a small shift equals this big change, then why don't I apply some of that stuff to myself? So the book has 33 spiritual concepts in there. And if you look at them, they kind of follow a linear sequence of like, hey, I'm going to introduce this idea that thinking spiritual might be a shift for you that you haven't thought of. And then it goes deeper and deeper into like trusting the process and believing in things that we can't see, right? That it actually ends with a story about spirit babies.
Oh my God, I read that book.
How they're like around and they're close by.
I read that, and the funny thing is, was reading that. It came across my way before I was pregnant, obviously, and it was such a beautiful. I think that I obviously didn't have a plan of getting or when I was going to get pregnant, but it just gave me a calm as well. That there's a timing and a place, and getting rid of like fear and nervousness about. Getting pregnant. In my case, I was divorced and then by myself. I went from I was like married and happy and living life, and then it just went to ground zero again when I just turned 30, 31. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to start life all over again. But I just reading that book, Spirit Babies, about there is souls on the other side just waiting to choose you to be their parent. There's things that you're doing in your life. They're just waiting on the sidelines just for that moment to choose you.
That's right. And that's why I like that we brought in light, because the more that we can shine with light, with a lightness of being and the way that we look at it, we become a brighter beacon for some of those babies that are looking for the parents. So
If you need any further proof, Shanina and I actually connected over our sixth senses. So, I mean, I see dead people. Shanina has crazy dreams,
Yes.
which is how, I mean, she tells me a lot of these dreams, so I can vouch for how this happened. Do you want to tell the story about how Zai came through?
Yeah. Well, my little psychic sixth sense, I've been, and this is trial and error, obviously. I dream when I have dreams. Obviously, like, we wake up and we forget these dreams sometimes. So, and I started noticing when I do remember the dreams, they start happening in real life and in my life or around my friends, whatever it may be. And so I started a dream journal years ago now. So, and I would put the date next to it. And so for me, there were messages from my guides or someone who's, looking over me, just messages, and they came into fruition, or it was just a sign or something to be cautious of. So I think he was 2022. In 2021, which is very early in my relationship with my partner, and I had a dream of a pregnancy, and I gave birth. I saw everything. I'm very visual. I have photographic memory, so I gave birth to a boy, and I was putting a blue onesie on him. So that was telling me that I was having a boy, and I wrote down, and I saw this. I go, he's going to have dark black hair, curly, and he's going to have he had like beautiful brown olive skin, and I said blue gray eyes. And for some reason as well, which was very weird, in the dream it said an hour to push. Like I would see words, an hour to push. I was like, that's really weird and random, but okay.
She told me all this at the time.
I wrote it down, and I became quite scared of it because I was like, this is really early to have a baby, and it's really scary. I don't want to. I'm like, I'm not ready to have a baby right now. I'm in the middle of a relationship. It's very fresh and very new, my career. And a year later, also my son came as a surprise, but a year later, Zai was about to come into this world, and I remember the doctor telling me, okay, we're going to push now. And I looked at the clock and I said, if this is like my dream, I don't know. It was around 11 o'clock, which is my favorite number, by the way. Zai came out 11:50. So exactly like
An hour to push.
An hour to push. He came out with so much dark hair. Till today, he just has so much hair. I remember my mum saying like, wow, Shanina has so much hair. I was like, oh my gosh. And Zai, until this day, has the most beautiful gray, blue, green eyes. But he came out and had this royal blue, gray eyes. And I said, he's exactly like my dream. And it was very, very weird. And so I have dreams about my friends and things in life. And
you had a dream about Rihanna being pregnant with a boy that you told me about 4 months before she actually announced.
So another thing with that, I was in denial that I was pregnant, and I was just like, I don't think it is. No, it's not going to happen. And Georgia and I were actually in Melbourne together, and we had a night out, and I just was traveling quite a lot, and I just got COVID as well, and I was like, it must be travel, and everything must be off right now. And I went home. We went out, home, went to sleep, obviously, and I had a dream in the morning. And my dream, I was looking at Rihanna. Behind her was a blue baby shower. And she goes, I'm pregnant. And
lucky
she hasn't
getting an invite to that.
I know.
In your dream.
So lucky. I was looking at her, and she said to me, she goes, I'm pregnant. And she hasn't announced this yet in the real world. And I looked down at my stomach, and I put my hands on it, I go, me too. And the dream finished. I was like, all right, I need to take a pregnancy test. This is really, really weird. And after that dream, I took a pregnancy test. It came up, I was straight away pregnant.
Oh my God.
And then I called Georgia and I said, and by the way, Rihanna's pregnant as well. She did. And she's having a boy. And she's like, really? I'm like, it's in the dream if I'm wrong. And everyone was like feeling she was having a girl. I think there was pictures of her in the paparazzi. Yeah. And I told my other best friend, he's like, oh my God, you guessed it. And I was like, it was in my dream.
You were shown that.
Yes.
Yep.
But I wanted to talk about COVID as well and the attachment, how that plays a role in infertility in women today as well. We're talking about that.
Before we go
Yeah,
to
before we
that,
go
could
there.
I please share a dream that
Yes.
Yeah,
has-
please do.
I don't think I would be sitting here right now if I didn't have the dream. I already had Kira, which she was speaking to me, and I would like to talk about that if there's time. But
Of course.
Guy Ringler had there was another doctor partner at the California Fertility Partners. It was Dr. Joyce Vargas. And she loved the idea that I had Kira and with an X. And she was the one who I went to first when I said my FSH is high. And I was like, show me the secret sauce, the magic that's behind the scenes that all you doctors use when you have high FSH. And she was like, I'm really sorry, there's nothing. Well, when I got pregnant, she was the first to RSVP to the baby shower. We always connected over astrology, and we were very close until one of my lesbian patients came in, and they were like, Dr. Vargas is very sick, and we're going to switch to Dr. Ringler. And I said, oh my gosh, okay, well, what's going on? It was like, she's coughing a lot. This was 2008, and I felt this deep sadness, and a few weeks later, I had a dream. She went into a medical coma to try to stop the asthma attack that she was having. It was some kind of like lung problem. And in my dream, she came to me and said, I'm not coming out of the coma. And I gasped like, no, don't say that. And she said, and there's something really big that you've got to do. And you're not going to want to do it because you're kind of anxious, but go to CFP and they will help you. And then I woke up and I sent Guy an email and I said, I had this dream and Joyce talked to me, and 6 days later she passed away. And at the funeral I went to Dr. Mars and I reminded Dr. Ringler about this dream, and they said, whatever you want to do. And I said, well, I guess what I should probably do is teach the patients at the CFP what Joyce and I both knew, which was that if we could change the way that the women think about what's happening, because her background was in psychology, and if we can change the way that they are eating, because she was all, I think, like keto or paleo, then we can change the quality of their eggs. And they said, whatever you want to do. And they opened up their lobby, and I started teaching the SEED program as a live workshop there in their lobby, and that's how it started. And then I became pregnant with the second baby against the odds, Jack.
Wow.
And I used to push a little cart full of recipe handouts, pre-made food, and all the stuff to teach these women. And that just became too much, and so it became an online program. We filmed movies, and those movies are dedicated to Joyce. There's a picture of her at the end, and it's like, I think for anybody who's in the SEED program already and they see that picture of this woman in a mermaid costume and they don't know what the story is, that's what the story is, and that's who Joyce Vargas was. And I think that speaking of light beings, she shines a light over my office and over the California Fertility Partners, and it's just like, it's a really good way of knowing that they do live on and they do help, and there are guides around. And without the strength of Joyce believing in me, Dr. Ringler and Dr. Mars, they might not really understand what I do, but that was part of it. It was a divine design orchestrated thing, the SEED
goodness.
program.
Oh, that's an amazing story. Like I got my heart like dropped in
Oh,
me
me
chills.
too. I mean, you and I have exchanged a lot of stories, but I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful, and I got to say, girls, it's really freaked me out to make these movies, to share my story, to try to promote myself on Instagram when I'm still very much active with my patients.
Yeah.
I really want to help them reach their goal more than I want to get a bunch of followers. I mean, I understand we've got to do both, but I mean, this is how it is. It's how I roll, and the people on my team are like, why don't you film some videos? Like, you're so fascinating. People want to know. And I'm like, because I'm in here wiping tears because so-and-so's emailing me about having a miscarriage because I got to run and help with this embryo transfer. Like, still very much active. When the Erin Foster podcast came out, I was on a sabbatical, and Erin was like, Danica's not taking patients. Well, I'm back in now.
Great. Amazing.
And things have really changed, but Dr. Vargas knew in that dream. She said, there's something really big you got to do, and it's going to freak you out. And she was right.
Wow. And I mean,
because it's a message to come in and say, ladies, there is more you can do. Because how would they believe that when they're throwing $25,000, $40,000, $100,000 at IVF and it's not moving the needle?
yeah.
So why would a little online course make any difference? But it does, because it's speaking to what you really believe. And we're living in the moment of manifestations, right? So if you see these things, then your energy is already out there, and then it's this like matrix move, right? Like then it all like materializes, I think. So, so for her to tell me that, and then I ran with it. Some people would have a dream and they'd just be like, oh, that was weird. Not me. No, not me. I was like, okay, now gotta get on the phone.
Do you think it's important for your patients to maybe like take or create a journey with themselves and like find themselves spiritually? Because it seems like
I do think that, mostly because I think where we're headed as humans is so stressful, for lack of a better word. You know, it's so technologically advanced, and the different pressures, and we don't know. Now we're aware. Spiritualists know that uncertainty was always the truth. But now the massive population understands, like, oh my God, I don't have any clue what's coming next. And that uncertainty is really like palpable, right? So the children who come in, they really know themselves.
Yeah.
But I think that's because the moms really know themselves, or the partnership is formed stronger, and then the magic happens of the connection, and then that's the child that's born. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it, as I have the benefit of seeing women when they first come to my office, and then seeing them when they are pushing a stroller into my office with a baby, or they let me know, hey, it worked.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a massive expander for everybody. And just sitting here talking to you today, God, I remembered another story. I actually found out about my brain tumor through a dream. I think I told you that. Did I?
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah,
Yes,
Remind me.
Yeah, so I was 22, very young, not the age you expect to be diagnosed with a brain tumor. And I'd been feeling a little bit off health-wise. I had really irregular menstrual cycles. I'd been fainting and just generally feeling off. And then one night, I remember I was DJing somewhere, and I had driven to that particular gig. And when I drove home, I was so tired. You know when you're so tired you can't get out of the car? So I thought, I'll just have a little power nap in the car. So I fell asleep in the garage. And as I woke up, the words flew out of my mouth. And I said, I have a brain tumor. And then I remember just looking around, because there was no one there, going, oh, that's really strange. Like, why would I say that?
Yeah.
And scary, too.
Yeah, and I couldn't shake the feeling. But then when I went through the process of getting diagnosed, and the doctor sort of said, oh, yeah, you know, it might be a brain tumor. I said, oh, it is a brain tumor. I had a dream about it. And then we found it.
Wow. Right.
So there you go. Listen to your dreams, everyone.
Listen to yourself.
Listen to yourself.
Listen
Yes.
to yourself. It's your intuition, your gut, and it's your spirit. This was one thing I've been learning about, is like your spirit is, you know, if you're able to unmask the stress in your life, and stress causes so much inflammation, I think, on our body. And I think for me, I've seen it like bloating and just the effects of it, but it gets you in tune with your spirit. I think also that's why we also have dreams, because our body is so relaxed in a state of
you're in the theta
calm.
state.
Yeah. I one of my biggest questions as well, I'm really interested in what are the foods that, you know, help and connect with fertility, and that, you know, gets things going. I'm really, really interested in. Did you have to do that, Georgia? I didn't even know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I went from my baseline when I came to see you was I was told by other doctors that I had no chance, or this one other doctor, that I would have to go through 1 round per egg to freeze.
Right, to do
And just
each round you would get one egg.
I would get one
That's
egg.
a
And
lot.
just keep in mind that each round is $20,000. So add
and that
that
they
up.
want you to have a basket of 20 or something.
Yeah, so he said, oh, you want a minimum of 10 eggs. Being an overachiever, I was like, 10? I want 20. Got 26 in the end, thanks to Danica and Dr. Ringler. But yeah, so when I came to you, that was what I was told. It was going to take one round per egg. And the results that you and Dr. Ringler got me, I got 14 the first round and 9 the second.
Right.
And then I started to get cystic ovaries, so that created an issue for me, and I only got a few rounds. I ended up doing 5 rounds because I had some hormonal issues that made... Basically, I had I had ovaries appear as follicles because they looked the same on the scan. So it's very difficult to tell the difference between a cyst and a lead follicle, which means it's hard to know when to trigger at the right time. So I think my body was just not doing great hormonally towards the end, and I wasn't getting the best result towards the end. My aim was to get over 30 eggs in the end. I ended up with 26, and then I decided to stop.
Letting it be enough.
Yeah, that was enough, and I was told by both you and Dr. Ringler that's a pretty good amount, so I just thought I'll just leave it as is. But yeah, I mean, sorry, just to circle back to Shanina's question, I remember we put me on all sorts of herbal supplements.
Right.
I was coming in. I came to see you right after my procedures too.
Right.
That was a big help as well.
So if it's okay for me to share what we did, kind
yeah,
of?
what works and what doesn't.
Okay, so in Chinese medicine, we learned that there's 4 phases to the menstrual cycle, and that's pretty much true with Western medicine, right? You have the bleeding phase, you have the pre-ovulatory phase, and then you have post-ovulation, and then you have a PMS window. So I call that phase 1, bleeding, phase 2, building, phase 3, being vulnerable, and phase 4, imbalanced, and you want to balance it out. So I would have taught that to you, Georgia. You would have, pardon me, you would have found that fascinating.
Yeah.
And then we extrapolate beyond that, and we say, well, there's certain foods, and the foods will support the hormone balance. So, for example, a woman's in her period, that's a cleanse, right? The pores will open, she'll be more sweaty, she'll have bleeding come out, maybe she'll be crying. So like this big release moment. So we want to support the release with green cleansing foods, as well as something kind of fortifying. So like that would be a
Ice cream for me.
Well, that would be cold. That would be the anti.
Pasta and ice cream.
and pasta. Yeah.
So I teach my gals like have some greens to help slough the tissue, and it also brings down the unopposed estrogen. And then I would want them to have some kind of meat-based or protein, something that would fortify and replace the lost iron.
Yeah.
And then we would move into the egg, like support the follicles. So we want to support her own rising estrogen levels.
I remember this stage. I won't cut you off, but I remember it.
Yes, this would be the biggest ask. I want the ladies to take a raw egg, put it into the blender.
I did it.
What if you have an allergy to egg whites?
Then
just do
just
it?
the egg yolk.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
the egg yolk
Okay.
then, because it's really the yolk that we're getting at anyway. That's what we want, the source of the cholesterol.
Okay.
So I tell the ladies, okay, put your athlete hat on, crack that egg.
Eat the frog.
Oh my
Eat the egg.
And the egg.
So like put that egg in the blender, look, maybe smell, does it look funky? Does your intuition say that this is not a good egg? Then you pour your raw, unpasteurized milk into the blender. Then you put your, then you put
I know I'm tough.
Yeah, I'm like,
then come again?
Yes.
Then you put your dry ginger powder in there, which is an antidote to food poisoning, just to like help calm. It also warms it up because the milk is cold in energy. So you put that warm ginger and you sprinkle some cinnamon and just a touch of raw honey, and you blend it. And now everybody's like, oh my God, that sounds disgusting, or I hate milk, or...
now at Air One, you can get your
You-
baby maker
Yes,
smoothies.
yes. So Air One has the raw, unpasteurized milk. So does Sprouts, Bristol Farms. Women who are listening or doing the seed program in New York, there used to be something, I think it was called udder milk, UDDER, like the cow udders.
Yeah.
But other places, women have to find a farm, rent a cow, So
Can
that
you rent a cow?
you rent out the cow
Okay.
so that you can drive to the farm like once a week to get your allotment of her milk.
Wow.
That's the only way that it's not illegal.
Wow. That's crazy.
Meanwhile, let's just explore this controversy for a second. Sure, let's shoot up all the different exogenous hormones, synthetic hormones,
Yeah.
and not blink an eye.
One of them's made
But-
from horse pee, right?
Well, I don't. That's a menopause hormone.
question.
That's
Oh,
a
yeah.
yeah. But there's
What?
but then we're
Oh, yeah.
but then we're going to be freaking out about having unpasteurized milk that
Yeah.
has been screened through like the dairy quality control.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
Ridiculous.
so it is really interesting where, okay, in the thousands of women that I've made this recommendation to who are now card-carrying mothers, right? And so it worked for them. What would have been the worst thing that I've seen is a soft stool.
Wow.
Okay.
Not even
So-
diarrhea, just a soft stool.
A soft stool.
Oh, okay.
But for the most part, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that I like it that much. So
I didn't hate it.
Just the push for it is it has probiotics intact. It has the enzymes intact because it hasn't been heat treated or chemically treated. And it's also high in calcium, high in good fat. And the cows are treated well and they only eat grass instead of being pumped up with soy, and then you're getting those hormones. And if you're drinking regular milk, even if it's organic, you don't know what the cows are eating. You don't-
Antibiotics that are being given as well. Yeah, I've seen. Oh, you know this too. Like coming from Australia, and when I came over to America, like pouring the milk, I was like, why is it translucent?
Yeah, different color.
Different color in Australia. It's like it looks full cream. We don't know also like how, but I believe that produce is quite better in Australia.
Oh,
so
yeah.
very like farm to table, but I definitely saw a difference in the milk and I stopped drinking it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I
that
was like, I don't think this is good for me at all.
right. So I'm not a dairy pusher. I'm not a dairy proponent. My kids drink raw milk. I prefer that that's what they have even now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It helps build better bones. The body can assimilate it. It's not processed and all of that.
Processed
So-
junk that
Right.
we're not supposed to eat.
Right, exactly.
Eating a
So it doesn't
cow.
cause all that inflammation. It actually is alkalizing to the system, the whole milk, the
Wow.
whole raw milk.
Wow. So, okay, so this is, just to circle back, this is during the ovulation
Right,
stage.
so building phase, and
Right.
that would be phase 2. And so that helps to tip the scale. We know a little biology here. We want to get the estrogen level up high enough, and then that triggers an LH to surge, and then the follicle ruptures and the egg comes out for fertilization. So when I'm talking to the women about the mindsets on these phases, phase 1 obviously is like we're releasing that last month didn't work. Then phase 2, we're building up potential. It's all about like what's possible. And the estrogen level rising supports that in the women's moods. They're just feeling their most sexy, most confident. Things are swelling in the right places. Yeah, they feel bloated, but they still feel like having sex. It's a sexy time. So it's like, okay, now we're building.
I remember this. I wasn't even in a relationship at the time, I don't think. And I remember going through this going, damn, like I
You're on the
feel...
streets feeling great.
Yeah, I was like, I was ready to get pregnant even though I wasn't planning to get pregnant.
Right. And that's why when we're talking to, because we did develop a class in the SEED program specific to egg freezing. And it's like, whoa, ladies, let us preface this class by saying, you're not here because you're infertile. You're here because you're getting insurance. You're doing something that's empowering. You're doing something for yourself. You're taking control of this situation so that you don't get somewhere 5 years down the line and, oh, shoot, I didn't get any eggs.
Yep.
So I think it's great that we're promoting more awareness and like telling the ladies like there are ways of making more eggs, and there's like the Kind Body is becoming more of a popular business where women can freeze their eggs more affordably, at least here in Los Angeles. Something.
Wait, I don't know about this.
Yeah,
Can
I
you
don't know.
tell us
I
about
don't know.
that?
I don't know enough about it to. I
Okay.
don't want to misspeak, but it's called Kind Body, and they're helping women collect their eggs and get them in the freezer.
Because as I mentioned, it can be an incredibly expensive process. I mean, I'll tell you how much I spent. 5 rounds, do the math. $100,000. So, but even though I spent that much money, guess what? Best money I ever spent.
Your insurance.
Yep, I regret
Yeah.
nothing because I'm now, in my later 30s and still not ready to have a child.
And you can go into a relationship and
Yeah.
just be yourself without that panic of, is this going to work out? I need
pressure.
to talk to you about fertility.
Yeah,
Hey, we don't
I've
want
got
that.
time.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
just the stress relief that I get knowing that whenever I'm ready, even if physically I can't, I've got those 26 little insurance policies
Right.
ready to go.
Right.
Cute.
Oh, brings my-
I am getting stressed and pressured to have a second, and I don't have insurance policy right now.
It's okay, you can borrow one of mine.
Yeah.
Although I feel like you're not going to have any problems, Shanina. She just looks at someone and she's like, ready to go.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Yeah. Okay.
So I should just tell you quickly. So then after ovulation, there's phase 3.
Yes.
And that's when women are vulnerable. The follicle has ruptured, it's secreting progesterone. So then they feel a little tired, maybe edgy, insecure. And that's on an innate level. They don't know, did the sperm find and fertilize the egg or not? And whether we're trying or not, after ovulation, it's kind of an inward time. It's a bloaty time. It's
Yep.
not then, and then that segues right into phase 4, which is the PMS window, and that's characterized with what I call visual distortion. You look in the mirror, and no matter how many people are saying, like, "Oh, you look really pretty," you're like, "It just looks bad today."
Wait, is that why?
Visual distortion. It's got to be some kind of hormone fluctuation.
has to be.
It's got to be a real
interesting.
thing. Of course, I don't have the clinical studies or clinical science explanation for this, except experiential data of
Yeah.
probably more than 10,000 women and watching this. And
Well, that's
the
an
first-
experiment in itself, isn't it? Like that's,
yes, it's
yeah.
experiential data
Yeah.
collected over all these years. When the women walk into my office, what's the first question I ask? What cycle day are you on? Because that tells me all I need to know. It'll tell me what her mood is, what kind of food she's craving, what I need to focus on in talking, what kind of food I need to recommend, where to guide her for the upcoming week.
Do you have conversations with the male partners and like what they need to eat?
Inside the SEED program,
Yeah.
we created the men's program, and it has 2 things. Number 1, a script for her to understand her 4 phases. So
get that script.
I love that.
Yeah.
That
so
is
it's very
some
empowering
great
for
planning.
the men
Yes.
too, right? So that the fighting goes down and the blaming goes down. He's set up to win. He knows, like, okay, she's in phase 3. She needs more hugs, or she's in phase 2. I've got to set up some dinners, or a lot of the time.
I'm like, I'm in phase 3, buddy.
So a lot of the times,
Read between the lines.
a lot of times the men take control to make some of the foods, the recipes, and that gives them something to do, because if they're couples doing IVF, then he's pigeonholed into this idea of all he does is provide a specimen in an awkward lab
Yeah.
at one of the clinics. So being inside the SEED program, he learns what she's doing. He volunteers to make some of the foods. Then he learns what he can eat and do. So the SEED program isn't saying, like, get out of the hot tubs and stop smoking pot. It doesn't like go like railing on him and all the things he's doing wrong.
Right.
It builds him up to say, like, you can do this. You can help by doing that. You can show up in this way. You can say this at this time.
Smoking pot. LA, we're in Los Angeles, a big weed consumers. What does that do for men's swimmers?
Well, it creates heat, for one thing, and then with that heat, that can look like cravings, munchies, and stuff, and wanting sugar, so it can throw off the blood sugar balance. Creating heat can mean like inflammation, and now in this post-COVID era, when we have heat, we have inflammation, and we have stickier blood from the antibodies that are floating around in the bloodstream, then it's a recipe for a clot. And let's imagine the testicles or the ovaries and these blood vessels that are around the testicles and ovaries. If there's microclots in there, then that's less oxygen getting to the eggs and the sperm cells.
Wow.
And I think that's part of how, I think that's what's happened in this post-COVID era. If you catch the infection or you are vaccinated, which who hasn't been at this point? Who
Yeah.
doesn't have some COVID antibodies?
Yeah.
So the reproductive age women have been, and couples, partners, both partners have been hit so hard. That's why some, like older people, they benefited maybe from having the vaccines because it actually made them stronger.
Yeah.
Thicker blood, stronger, so they're not as weak and frail, but the reproductive age with especially all the estrogen. So speaking of like endometriosis patients, they have stickier blood and adhesions, pelvic inflammation, and now we have antibodies and some other new trigger to the immune system happening. So these microclots could be a problem. And certainly that was what I've seen over the past couple of years. Now, thank goodness, knock on wood, year of the rabbit, whatever it is, 2023, we're having a lot more pregnancies. Maybe we're farther past the wreckage in the post-COVID era, so maybe that's behind us. But certainly during 2020, 21, and 22, I was watching the egg counts go down. I was seeing miscarriages of normal embryos, erratic cycles, bloodbaths is the report for their periods, the hemorrhaging, periods happening 2 to 3 times per month. And
Wait, what? So you noticed all these profound changes during the COVID period in a lot of your patients?
in every one of the patients, the teenagers, the women trying to retrieve eggs through stimulation of their ovaries, them doing embryo transfers.
Because, I mean, we
getting
heard a lot
pregnant.
of big farmers and say, oh, no, it doesn't affect fertility or anything like that. You disagree?
I would disagree, but, I think we're really supposed to not say very much about that. So
We don't care about that on the show. We talk
think
about
it's-
whatever we want.
Well, I think that I'm not saying yes or no. I'm vaccinated. I went through it, and I'm not pointing a finger at the vaccines. I'm saying something happened. Like in Hawaii, there was a hurricane, and now they're cleaning up the damage.
Right.
Here, we had this terrible pandemic virus. A lot of people died. A lot of people got sick. Everybody did what they thought they needed to do to be healthy.
Yep.
And that meant different things for different people, but here we are, and there we were. And when we were there, I saw X, Y, and Z. And I didn't imagine it. The women that were going through it, they certainly were coming in with a ton of questions for me and asking me for opinions, and I wasn't really free to give them because I hadn't really seen enough to say anything. All I could say is, really think this stuff through and try to take good care of yourself. Now we have a lot more information than we had back then. And I am offering my patients some suggestions of how I think if they have a lot of COVID antibodies or if they're having trouble getting pregnant or staying pregnant, then I would say make sure you're taking a fish oil to keep inflammation down, and that's part of a prenatal plan anyway. And I'm big on enzymes, and particularly serapeptase is something that I knew about helping endometriosis.
I took that.
Right?
Your recommendation?
Right,
Yes.
because it helps to degrade possible adhesions. So if we're talking about blood clots, then we definitely want to let that enzyme kind of work on potential blood clots. And then I also like to recommend vitamin K2 as it pulls calcifications out of small blood vessels. So all these 3 things combined can really help to promote better blood flow into the ovaries. And as luck would have it, as I was building Well People, transitioning to my new business, I had put everybody on this protocol. I had, say, like 15 of my fertility cases, and I gave them these suggestions. And suddenly, right as I moved into the new clinic, the majority of those women, like pretty much all 15 of them, are suddenly pregnant, and most of them have given birth now.
Wow.
So something
I'm steering
shifted.
away from this program.
Even doesn't need to be help.
I'm gonna. That's amazing. Like I would like. It's such a beautiful, natural approach.
And it just makes sense, right? To make sure that the blood is flowing better, which, as you asked at the beginning of the podcast, what are the ways that acupuncture works? Well, it brings endorphins and it helps to move the blood. So ways that keep the blood flowing, keeps oxygenation and fresh oxygen getting to the cells, and it wipes away the debris and toxins.
Amazing. I mean, these are such great tips, and this is such good information for people that are either just starting their pregnancy journey or going through fertility issues. There is a lot more you can do than just trying it naturally or going to the IVF doctor.
And doing round after round after round and not changing anything.
Right. There's so much you can do to support your body. So we've talked about food. We've talked about acupuncture. I think you also mentioned mindfulness. What are the other tips that you have for people on their journey?
I think mantras, affirmations, but it's got to be something that's aligned with who you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
You can't just say, oh, I'm going to get pregnant this month, and I'm going to say that a lot, and then I'm going to remember that or believe that, or I'm going to fake it till I make it. My mantra is, I allow the necessary shifts to occur that are in the highest good of everyone involved and as quickly as possible. When I get backed into a corner, that's what I say to myself. Because it's passive, like I'm allowing things to change that need to change. That's in the highest good of everybody involved. There's like, I'm not wishing any bad on anyone, but the situation needs to change in a way that's for the better.
Yeah.
Wow.
So affirmations that you design it for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I wanted to ask you a question about birth control. And we talked about this a lot, because of my brain tumor, I was prescribed birth control at a very young age, which we now know was the age my brain tumor started growing. Basically what happened is that my menstrual cycles became extremely erratic as soon as I got them at, I think I was about 12 or 13. And the doctor's solution to that at the time was to put me on birth control. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because when I was eventually diagnosed with the brain tumor, my doctor informed me then that it's probably a good thing I'd been on the birth control for so long, because it was giving me fake estrogen, which probably stopped me from getting osteoporosis. So it did have a positive effect for me in that sense. But I've been on birth control, and I actually just went off it a couple of weeks ago. I've been on birth control for the majority of my adult life and even my teens. And I'm just interested to know from your experience what your thoughts are on birth control and if it has an effect on the body. Because now we have all these other options. I mean, I'm using an app called Natural Cycles now, which is helping me to track my period. I think you are too.
I am too.
Yeah. So, you don't necessarily have to take a pill.
Right.
And I mean, what do you think? Is the pill safe?
Oh gosh, that's maybe out of my domain, because remember, my experience with the birth control pill is its usage in an IVF protocol.
Right.
We use it to suppress the cycle so we can control the eggs.
Right.
Or the MDs do that, and when they're doing that, then I am having them eat more green foods to take out the toxic effects of the unopposed estrogen.
Okay.
And I'm also an endometriosis sister. I've had 3 laparoscopies for pelvic inflammation due to endometriosis, one last year in 2022, as I'm 8 years into menopause.
Goodness.
My endo was still flaring up, causing trouble. So when we take the pill, it puts exogenous hormones in, and I think it can work in cases where we know, does this woman need more progesterone, or does she need more estrogen, or does she need a combination pill? And I think that's a question really best discussed with the medical doctors on a case-by-case basis. I don't think that's a blanketed answer I can give.
Right.
But it seems like it was right for you. And
it was. And I mean, that's the funny thing. Like I do see both sides of the pill. This isn't me attacking the pill. Like I said, it probably saved me from a debilitating disease. However, I often wonder, has it had a negative effect on me as well? Because they say it can do all sorts of things like, make you not attracted to the same type of person that you would be attracted to if you weren't on the pill, and things like that. So I was just wondering if you over your many years of experience had noticed shifts in people going on and off the pill.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And a lot of times it's women who have endometriosis. They'll be put on the pill and then they'll start having breakthrough bleeding, or they'll feel bloating. There's definitely side effects when they're on it. And so I think right now in the post-COVID era, we're really trying to figure out, do we suppress with birth control or something called Lupron? Or
What's
do we?
Lupron?
It's a hormone suppressant that's like a good way to calm everything down. So it's used in endometriosis, it's used in fertility protocols. It's a way that suppresses the hormones so that they can control the development of the eggs
Yeah.
and then release that suppressant, and then the eggs start growing. So it's
Yeah.
really like the wizardry of it all.
Yeah, it certainly is wizardry. And it's so different for everybody. Yeah.
With your patients, do you see a correlation with age and the drop or decrease of eggs? Like I was told, planning if you want to have another baby, maybe like 35, just a heads up, there's like a 20% decrease in like fertility and, you know, like become like a high risk as well because it's that age is really like, for some reason, 35, it's a complete drop. And it's quite scary. I don't know. Have you seen that
For sure.
in your work?
Yep. So the group that I attract to me is average age 38 to 44. And when they're at 42, it's like particularly dire because they know that the number of eggs that they're recruiting each month and the number of eggs that they have left is dwindling. You know, we have a finite supply of egg cells. And so they do have to start dropping off somewhere. And 35, 36 is the age. And that is pretty consistent with what I've seen, which is why when I created the seed program, knowing that I had to make the few that I had left really good quality and make them work for me and develop my fertile confidence, that's what I try to do with the women that I meet that are in that age range, to say, like, yes, there's a drop-off, but we can improve the quality and we can work with what we have.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. In fact, since I haven't seen you in 6 or 7 years, you wouldn't know, but in 2018 to 2020, I ran a clinical trial with the SEED program as an intervention. Had 7 doctors in LA recruit their patients and use it. So they had a historical case of IVF that didn't work out, and they recruited them in to do the SEED program 1 month. And there were only 10 women because my recruitment window was very short, but there were 10 women. Between them, they had 33 eggs. That means like each woman had like 3 eggs.
That's it?
That was it.
Wow.
And between all 10 women, there was 1 normal embryo. So the doctors said, why don't you try this clinical trial, this seed program intervention?
Yeah, nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose, which was why I picked that group, because I could really measure if there was a change.
Yeah.
So then they did the seed program for 1 month. The 33 eggs became 58 eggs. 58 mature eggs, because I needed some marker that the MDs would respect as a measurable thing that they could show. Like, it couldn't be just like, oh, their mood improved or whatever. It was like, there's almost double the number of eggs. And then there were 6 normal embryos.
Wow.
But then an added thing happened. So these women had been trying for 2 years, and they got these normal embryos, and some of them went right into a transfer the next month, and 3 of them became pregnant and didn't miscarry, and a 4th one said at the like, we surveyed them at the end, and she said, this has really changed my outlook such that even though I don't get any more eggs, I'm going to go straight into donor egg cycle. And she became pregnant soon after the intervention. So it matched what I have been seeing in clinic, which is if we can get the women to do these programs, or the seed classes, then there's 40% of them that become moms. And it's within this window typically of 2 to 6 months. And to the point, yeah, really quick.
That's quick.
And to the point of the name of the podcast here, 80/20, I tell the women, because they want to get in there and do it like 100%. And the ones that do it 100%, they don't get it there any faster. In fact, they are more like type A, and it's like they're more frustrated. I'm doing
Too
everything
stressed.
perfectly.
Yeah.
I say, no, please do it somewhere between like 40 and 80%. You know, touch in, use the app, look at it a little bit each day, and incorporate some of the foods, but get the mindset down. If you can get the mindset down, you're 60% there. If you can add the foods, that'll take you 40% of the way. If you do a little bit of both, then you're like between the 40 to 60, 20 to 80, whatever. Like, just don't try to do it 100%, and don't just discard it and do it 0%.
It's the perfect 80-20.
The perfect 80/20.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I can't believe. So you went from, so there was one embryo, and the rest were just eggs. They weren't fertilized that were in that group. And you went from that between 10 women to 4 pregnancies.
Right. So there were 10 women. They were in dire straits. They were called poor responders, diminished egg reserve, advanced maternal age. And between them, they had 1 normal embryo, 33 eggs. They did 1 month of the seed program, and together they had 58 mature eggs extracted. They matched them with the sperm. There was no change in the protocol. The doctor remained the same, so we controlled what we could.
Yeah.
And then there's the 6 normal embryos, and then they did a frozen transfer with the normal embryos.
Yeah.
3 of them became pregnant, and 1 of them did like soon afterwards. And then I got my doctorate.
I'm just blown
That was
away
my
by that
thesis.
number. I
It's
mean,
pretty crazy.
If anyone is
Yeah.
listening to this podcast, and I'm sure a lot of people will be that are having fertility struggles, I mean, if that doesn't give them hope, I don't know what will. Don't give up.
Because it really showed, like, if we took women, like those are the women I want to speak to,
Yeah.
the ones that have lost hope.
Yeah.
To know, like, because they come in to IVF and they get started and they're so naive, and they hear, okay, IVF has like a 1 in 17% chance, or so it works 25% of the time if you're this age or whatever, and they hear these statistics and they think, well, of course I'll be the statistic that works.
Yeah.
And then they find out 4 times later or still not working or whatever. So what I want the women to feel is that they're the empowered individual, not the general statistics in the general population.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow.
You've given them so much hope, even with your own personal story as well. And it takes a lot of courage to like sit there and hear stories about. It's like it's not negative, but I'm sure even with your story about your friend passing away and giving that message, it's just like your heart like swells up, and you're like hearing all this, and then you were dealing with your own personal issues, but
Right.
just hope. Seriously, like it's just always like giving a beacon of hope. I think it's really, really amazing.
Yes, and calling it a heart broken open, right? Heart broken open by these challenges and trials and tribulations. The majority of the time, the women that I work with, they come in and they're so upset, and then as we work together, their marriages become so solid and they become so strong in who they are. You know, like you're very strong in who you are, and then look what happened. You know,
You had a baby.
I think there is something. I really think there's something to it. I call it fertile confidence, and
That makes sense.
yeah,
I think where I was in, not everyone knows this, but when I was telling you before, like I got COVID, and not long after that, I fell pregnant. But if I look at it, I was in a really like happy place with. I went home for Christmas, and I was eating all my favorite foods and just traveling and just enjoying life, and I think to the fullest. So the idea of myself, my spirit, or my mood, I was just probably in a good place, even though I was dealing with a lot of stress on my body. But then also the COVID
right.
did I wouldn't say mess up my cycle, but threw off my cycle.
Right.
Which was interesting, which made
For
me
sure.
ovulate in a different place, I guess. So it was just meant to
Right,
be.
we could
So
say
she had a happy whoopsie.
the puppet masters were busy that day.
Yeah.
But chapter 3 in my book is called "Know That You Are Enough," and I think that's another message for the women. When you get the news that you're infertile at 31, or you get the news at 41 that you don't have very many eggs, it's how could human beings, they're so predictable, right? How can they not hyper focus on what they've just been told?
It's exactly what happened to me. I
Me
wasn't
too.
even thinking about having a baby at that
Until
age.
somebody told you.
It was actually triggered by my sister, who had asked to borrow one of my eggs, and that didn't happen, by the way. She ended up having her own children with her own eggs, but at the time she was going through a similar but different journey, and so that's how I started going through all the testing, and that's how I found out. And so it was so confronting, because I was nowhere near ready. I was single. I was, living my life. I thought, 31, that's way too young to be worried about this. And then all of a sudden, it was all I could think about.
Right.
For about a year
Yeah.
as I was going through all this. It was
Right.
just crazy. So, and I mean, as you said, you went through something similar. And just, I mean, for everyone at home, you ended up becoming a mother.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened
this is
there?
my Kira Connor story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there I was inside Well Women, and I was helping, tirelessly helping, working myself to the bone, really. I'm a Virgo. I'm here to serve.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah.
So I was like, just really being of service will fill you up at the same time that it's kind of draining you. And I think I learned the balance of the two. And I kept hearing this little voice, I'm Kira Connors and I'm coming to you. And I was like, wow, that voice, like, am I imagining that? And sometimes it would be particularly loud. Or I would go for an ultrasound and then I'd learn, oh, great, egg reserve is even lower. Or an HSG, oh, great, my right tube is blocked. And I started collecting the information about all the different things that I needed to fix or that weren't working. I'm Kara Connors, I'm coming to you. Got to be willing to trust the process. I would just hear that over and over and over. And then I said, wow, that's really specific information. And it happens to be the last name of a former boyfriend.
So you weren't involved with this guy at the time?
No. Mm-mm. In fact, we had been broken up for a couple of years at that point.
Wow.
And she was very specific. And I said, well, why can't you be Kira Broadwin, Vininsky, Grossman, or Smith?
Yeah.
And she was like, no, I'm very clear. I'm
Clooney, DiCaprio.
To name a few.
But she was very specific and kind of conveyed this sense of it's going to happen. It's so clear and it will make sense later. And it was like, you have to trust the process. So I was like, okay, well, I had asked before she started showing up on the scene, when I got my first bad news information, your FSH is in the 20s, I called Dan Connors and I said, look, I got this bad information and I think our genes would mix well. Could I store some of your sperm while I do this experiment working on my eggs? We met in a lab, a biology lab. So that was just how we talked. And he was like, well, you know, like, I think that's a cool idea and all, but that would mean possibly you'd be raising these kids alone or without me or with somebody else. And so I'm not down for that. But if you want a traditional family, then yeah, we can talk about it. I was like, us getting back together? I'm 31. Like, I need to live my life. So we hung up the phone, and I think 4 or 5 years passed, and I had 4 different breakups. The names of those guys I mentioned as other last names, right? So when Kira Connors was on the scene, getting loud or reminding me, and I was like, why couldn't it work on these other ways? And she like kind of winky face, like, well, you'll find out later, but you got to get me here. And so finally, I kind of had enough. I started writing my book, and I submitted a book proposal. And I wrote this chapter on willingness, and I realized I wasn't really being willing to even give that a chance. Here he had offered it to me, but I wasn't ready and I wasn't willing.
Yeah.
So it like clicked into place, and I said, okay, I get it. I would be willing, but Kira, I'm not willing to chase him down and have him resent me later. So you would need to have him call me and him be ready. And I swear this is true. The very next day, he called.
What?
Well, women,
Gosh.
it gets creepier.
And I'm like, ew.
And he said, do you remember our friend John Hansen? And I said, not really. And he said, well, he passed away, and I read the eulogy, and I was talking to people about making amends. And I'm thinking, oh, you're growing up. You're like finally maturing. This is intriguing. And he said, and I decided I need to make amends. And a little voice told me to call you first. And I said, oh, my
Wow.
God, I know who that little voice is. She's very clear. She tells me all the time. She comes to the office. I thought I was imagining it, but she says she's Kira Connors. And he goes, well, we should talk further. 8 days later, he moved into my apartment, and we had a very platonic situation. We had a very platonic situation, and we talked for about 4 weeks seriously. He's sleeping on the couch. We're having these conversations like this could be really crazy, but I guess we would try because it seems kind of destined. And the first time we tried, it actually worked. And was a challenging pregnancy. So the acupuncturists and doctors who thought I was so infertile, they were right to be concerned, but I had also been improving my fertility for those 4 to 5 years. So that's why I like to tell the women in the seed program. That they can become more fertile over time.
Wow.
That is such an amazing story.
And as it turns out, so we started raising Kira, and we were figuring it out, a platonic co-parenting situation that was very unenviable, very unconventional, kind of hard to explain. But
made sense to all of you,
but
especially
made sense
Kira.
to us. Yeah, especially Kira. And one day we saw Kira looking at these two sisters, and she looked behind her, and Dan and I were in the room, and we caught it. And we said, do you think she's ready for a sibling? And he said, well, when I was earlier today, I was thinking, I think I'm ready for a son. And I said, oh, my God, and how weird, I'm ovulating today. And though we hadn't had sex in like 2.5, 3 years, I said, this could be the weirdest thing. And he was like, God, why do you have to be like that? That's not very romantic. And I said, well, this isn't a romantic story. I mean, I guess it is on some level. It's like this destiny thing, and the two of us to navigate this awkwardness. But anyway, we did it that night, and I think about the women and all the shots and all the IVFs and all the tears, and I thought, if there is a miracle, I'll at least be willing again. Like, I had to do what I did before, and it turned out, again, with one attempt only, even though Jack's egg ovulated through the right side where the tube was blocked, and Kira's egg came through the ovary that had the 200 adhesions from endo. So they're very determined little kids. They're very strong-willed. They're very healthy. Kira is turning 16 this year in November, in a couple of weeks, and Jack turned 13. So now I'm a single mom of twins. My co-parent and I are very cohesive, and the kids are well-adjusted. It's very cool.
Wow.
You're such an inspiration to all of your patients.
What a story to
Yeah.
finish on.
Yeah, so exactly.
Do you think you can talk about this story though with your patients now? Because I feel like, coming in, I would, if I was a patient, I would want to hear that. It would give me the hope that I need.
Yes, so I do help them. I do share it. Almost everybody that comes in hears the story. And I will also ask them to remember how they felt when they met their partner, because it's a time of like something they can hang their hat on that they trust. Like, oh, that worked out. So I help them to remember this will work out too. And then I tell my inspirational story that's like, it may not look ideal, but let's find a way to make it work.
It was exactly what I needed to hear at the time that I came in. So thank you. And just hearing it again, even though I'd already heard it before, my jaw's on the floor.
Gave me butterflies and goosebumps all over.
Great.
Oh, Danica, you're so amazing. Now, before we wrap this up, where can people find you, and where can they find Seed Fertility?
Sure. Okay, so that one's easy, seedfertility.com.
Perfect.
There's a master class, there's an endo class, there's egg freezing class.
Amazing.
And then there's...
And maybe some anonymous stories.
There's an anonymous egg freezer in there who gives a story with her Australian accent.
She just got doxxed.
Who's got her basket of eggs and inspires other women to be empowered to go for it.
Amazing.
Then I have my own website that's danicathornberry.com, and that's where women can book like virtual sessions. And then I'm practicing at wellpeoplehealing.com. That's my new clinic that's got we're treating men and kids and women, fertility and all of the things, menopause.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And you have a book.
Yeah, I have.
Right there.
Well, Stick It To Me Baby. I'm working on a second one for the post-COVID era called
Exciting.
Well, Now What?
Well, now what?
Yeah. And the well is in there because women became well people.
Yes.
Right?
Amazing.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
You're such an accomplished, incredible human. I would be lost without you.
Just a
and
big message.
we can't thank you enough for your time today.
I can't thank you guys enough to have me on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
That was so much fun.
Oh, good. Thanks, Danica.